podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Chat with Chaps. This one is a special guest edition where we welcome Gary from the Stacey West Lincoln City podcast. Why would we be welcoming someone from Lincoln City, I hear you ask? Well, we're going to get into it. But before we do, welcome, Gary. How you doing, mate? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem at all, mate. Nice to be here, even if I'm not going to particularly enjoy what we chat about.
Well, yeah. I think when I spoke to you about it, it was sort of like, oh, is it good news? Is it not? But I guess something that may not be good for Lincoln City fans, may be good for Millwall fans. And for Millwall fans, listen to this. We are going to be talking about, of course, the pending move. I'll say pending because it's not quite done yet, of goalkeeper Lukas Jensen that will be moving from Lincoln City to the Den, looking to be clarified, I would imagine, this week. So, Gary, tell us a little bit more about Lukas Jensen.
So Lukas joined us on a free transfer from Burnley last season after being on loan at Accrington. We'd always loaned goalkeepers, so we'd loaned Alex Palmer, Carl Rushworth, Josh Griffiths. Seemed like a viable way to go. So when we signed a goalkeeper, it was a bit of a surprise. But he was every bit as good as those three were for us. He's right up there with the best goalkeepers that have played for Lincoln. Really kind of big lad. Off the field, a nice personality. We had another Danish player, Lasse Sorensen, who's just moved, and they kind of they injected a little bit of something different into the side. But in terms of goalkeepers, very, very good goalkeeper. There was a stat on Y-Scout I really like, which is goals prevented. I'm a stats geek. And in terms of goals prevented, he was twice as good as any goalkeeper in the division last season. Phenomenal shot stopper. And I know there will be people who will say, Roy Keane, that's his job. But there's a difference between having to stop shots and being able to stop a lot of shots. And Lukas Jensen was on the other end of the scale. Yeah, really good keeper.
Oh, well, that's music to our ears. And just to touch on that, I'm a stats geek, by the way. So just put this up in front of you. So this is from FB Ref. So a different, but it tells the same story, right? So for those of you listening on podcast, what we're showing here is Lukas's 23-24 stats, appearances 45, clean sheets 19, which was joint first with Wildsmith. And then the highest save percentage at 78%, which is ridiculous, to be honest, in first place in the league. So, Gary, that just backs up what you were saying there. And given that, I mean, was you surprised by the move, or did you think that there would definitely be clubs looking at him this summer?
I think it was always in the offing. Normally when Lincoln sign a player, it's a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal with a year's option that we can trigger, which kind of protects the club. And it emerged, excuse me, it emerged this summer that there wasn't the option in Lukas's deal. It was 2 years or he didn't sign for it. So there's a year left on his contract. Lincoln City are not a big club, but we aspire to be a Peterborough or an Oxford or a Plymouth that will bounce between the two divisions. And if somebody's going to pay a decent fee for one of our players when he could walk away free at the end of next season, then that's something we've got to consider. So I think there was always a question mark over whether we were going to be able to retain him. Lasse Sorensen was in the same position. Obviously, we sold him to Huddersfield for 400,000 a little earlier in the month. So it wasn't a huge surprise. Speaking to some people at the club, I think they were fairly relaxed about the situation that, we could sell Lukas. If somebody meets our valuation, then he will move on. He's a great player, but no footballer is irreplaceable. If Lukas moves on, there will be another goalkeeper that we can go and try and get. Will he be as good? You don't know. You never know with a signing. That's the beauty of hindsight, I suppose. So it wasn't a massive shock in short, no.
And just touching on sort of the fee then. So if rumours are to be believed, it is around 500,000 with some add-ons. Do you think that is, are you happy with that fee? The reason I ask you that question is because we've also recently signed Macaulay Langstaff, who we signed for 700k, which seems to be a bit of a steal. So some good business done there. But, do you think that fee is fair? And then I guess the other point is, although he played 45 games for you last season, I think outside of that, he's only played about 30, 40 other games on top of that for various other clubs. I think it was at Altrincham and stuff like that. So, yeah, just what do you think of the fee? I guess my question is.
If that's the fee, then you've got to be happy with it as Lincoln City. Our regular sales don't amount to that. When we think about the big sales that we've made over the last few years, Lass at 400,000, Teo Eden to Blackburn at 550, Harry Toffolo to Huddersfield again for I think a total of around 500,000. Good sales, but for a goalkeeper, I think if it's 500,000. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's in that ballpark. We're certainly going to be a good, healthy six figures. It wouldn't surprise me actually if it was a little bit lower with a sell on or with clauses. You've got to be happy with it. He's got a year left on his contract. He could have walked away next summer. It's only sadly a pressing need, I think, for a good goalkeeper. Regrettably, that's kind of led to that. So, unfortunately, you pick him up on a free, you sell him for, let's say, 400,000 a year later. It's phenomenal business for Lincoln City. It's how Peterborough have remained where they are over the last 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 years. They bring people in cheap, sell them on and go again. So,
yeah. And to be honest with you, maybe on a slightly different scale, but that's what I think as a club Millwall need to get better at as well, by the way. We're not very good at selling players at the right time. Most noticeably and most recently, Jed Wallace and Zian Fleming. But anyway, going back to Lukas. So he's 6'6", so he's not a small lad. 25 years old, so plenty of time before he hits his prime. What would you say at the moment in time are his sort of key attributes, or like his top 3 attributes?
Well, obviously, again, at shot stopping, it sounds blatantly obvious, but he's a great shot stopper. He's a good goalkeeper on one-on-one. Elements of Schmeichel maybe a little bit. I know that's lazy comparison with the whole Danish thing, but he makes himself big in one-on-one situations. I think we beat Bristol Rovers 5-0 last season, and XG, it should have been something like 2-2. He was outstanding in that game. His command of the area is brilliant, and that's the one attribute I like to see in a goalkeeper. I think if you've got a goalkeeper who'll come and take the ball, and he's 6'6", so he's not going to get stranded if he comes for it, he takes it. I think he's absolutely superb at that. And I think his communication with his defence has got to be mentioned, because you don't keep 19 clean sheets just by being a good goalkeeper. You can be a good goalkeeper and keep 4 clean sheets because you're constantly being bombarded. But if you have an understanding with your back 3, as it is that we play, I just think that it's an overall cohesive unit. And perhaps 2 seasons ago when we had Josh Griffiths on loan, who's a very good goalkeeper, it was chopping and changing the back 4. We conceded an awful lot of goals, even though he was a good keeper. So, yeah, communication, shot stopping, and command of the area for me.
Great. No, well, that's what we like to see. We do like to see goalkeepers that are confident and come out and try and claim the ball. And one other thing as well, obviously you've talked a bit about your recruitment process, usually in goal, where you do loan goalkeepers. How would you say he ranks against some of the other names you've already mentioned, like Palmer, etc.? How is he? Because Palmer is doing very well in the Championship, right? So, is he of that level, or do you think he'll get there? What's your view on that?
My view is he's of that level. So of the keepers that we've had in recent seasons, we've had Ryan Allsop, who I think went on to play for Derby. I'm not sure if he's in the Championship now. Josh Vickers, who played in the Championship, I think, with Rotherham. We've had Carl Rushworth with Alex Palmer. We've had Josh Griffiths, rather. I would put Lukas in the top 3. I would put him in the same bracket as Carl Rushworth, who is a superb goalkeeper, was at Swansea, obviously, this season.
Yeah.
I would liken him more in the way that he approaches the game, perhaps to Alex Palmer, a little bit bigger, a little bit more command of his area. But I would happily, if somebody said to me tomorrow, you can have Alex Palmer, Lukas Jensen or Carl Rushworth, it wouldn't bother me which of those 3 I had. I would put them on the same level. And for me, I think if a goalkeeper is decent, I actually don't think a step up in level is as hard for a goalkeeper as it is for an outfield player. Because for an outfield player, tactics change, pace changes, all that sort of stuff. With a goalkeeper, the fundamentals are always the same. You command your area, you stop shots. You've actually got better players in front of you. I'd argue it's easier for a goalkeeper to step up, if anything, because you're facing fewer shots. He'll walk into a number 1 spot in the Championship with no problem whatsoever.
I mean, that's a very solid testament of what we could be looking to receive. And I mean, that's fantastic. I guess my next question, I think you just answered it, was, do you think he can walk straight into a Championship side and step up to number 1, which I think you've answered that. So I'll move on to my next question. But before I do, I think it would be reminiscent of me not to mention the reason we're actually looking to sign a number 1 goalkeeper, and that is to do with the sad passing of Matty Sarkic, who was our number one goalkeeper last year and tragically lost his life at just 26 years of age over the summer, and it's really rocked the club for the second year running. We've suffered a very close loss, and I think we wouldn't have been in the market for one had that not happened. And I think it's just important to mention that and show love and thoughts to his family and friends. But I think it's probably also fair to say that Matty himself would have wanted us to go on and have a successful season. And obviously by doing that, you need to bring in a number one goalkeeper. The other thing that Matty was, I can't claim to have experienced this myself, but by speaking to a lot of people in and around the club, he was just a huge personality, a huge character. First one in the training ground, last one out. What can you tell me about Lukas Jensen's character off the field?
Every time I've met Lukas, he's always been amiable and approachable. We make a habit of signing good people as well as good players. So it's very, very rare that we have bad people around the club. The last one was probably Chris Maguire, who I won't go into too much. So I do some sponsorship and was at some sponsors' events. He always had time to talk to people. We're a very closed unit, so you only see what the club want you to see. But there's lots of pictures of him with supporters. He's always smiling. He was always engaging. Overshone a little bit, I think, by Lasse Sorensen, who was just the perfect person in that respect. Lass would be in coffee shops on a Friday morning advertising the fact he was there. So, he kind of overshone almost everybody. But my impression of Lukas is that he's really down to earth, focused. He knows what he wants. He knows where he's going. He's the ultimate and consummate professional. I don't think you see players falling out of nightclubs these days, but you certainly won't see Lukas Jensen doing that. So again, I think you're signing a good person as well as a good goalkeeper.
And that's reassuring to hear, because I think we're similar from that respect, where first and foremost at Millwall, we value work ethic over anything else. And I know all clubs say that, but I can honestly say that is something that Millwall fans just won't take anything less. And I think Neil Harris, the manager, only wants characters that fit that kind of good egg. It's very well documented at Mill that we have a good dressing room, and you want someone to come in and make it better, not try and be one of those sort of bad eggs. So that's really good to hear. One other question I had for you on Lukas, and I was just sort of doing on some of the various IMPS forums, I was just doing my research, and the only negative thing I could find was a few comments around his kicking. And look, our goalkeeper before Matty was Bart Bielkowski, who is one of, if not the best shot stoppers I've ever seen. Won 3 Player of the Year awards at Ipswich and 2 at us, but he couldn't kick ever. And that didn't matter in a Neil Harris team because we don't necessarily play that way. What can you tell me about Lukas Jensen's kicking?
I think if I had to pick one area of his game that could be better, it's perhaps his long distribution. I think he's fine playing the short game, playing out from the back. He's not a playing out from the back keeper. We've shifted kind of away from that a little bit. So a couple of years ago with Carl Rushworth and Josh Griffiths, it was very much ball at the feet, knock it around the back four. So he's not a Pickford style kind of play it out from the back. Some of his kicking has been not quite on point. Once or twice he's kicked it out. If you were a long ball game, it wouldn't work particularly well. He wouldn't fit into a Steve Evans side, for instance, that literally pumps everything forward. So if there's one area of his game, it would be that. However, I am aware of the fact that kind of behind the scenes, he had occasionally listened to our podcast and would argue that his kicking is certainly no worse than any of the other keepers that we've had in recent seasons. I think a keeper's kicking nowadays is less important than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, ultimately, I think it boils down to style, doesn't it? If you're playing, and kicking can mean many things. Kicking can mean, can he pump the ball 80 yards? Or it could also mean, is he comfortable with his feet and playing out and all that tiki-taka stuff, which is I say never going to be Millwall, but it's just not our style. It really isn't. So it worries me the least out of all sort of qualities within a goalkeeper. So that's kind of reassuring. Before we move on to moving away from Lukas, is there any sort of final thoughts on, assuming the deal does go over the line, that you'd want to share on Lukas Jensen?
I just think for a goalkeeper to have done what he did last season at 25 is massive, because you can be 35 and still playing international football. So I think he's at the very beginning of his career. For me, signing a goalkeeper at 25 is like signing a midfielder at 21 in terms of longevity. Deep down, this might sound like a really bold statement. It absolutely wouldn't surprise me if he comes to you, has a good season and moves on again. I can see him at some point being Danish number one. I genuinely think he's that good. He's been that impressive. And I'm gutted to see him leave Sinsel Bank. But it's like with anything, when one of your players moves on to bigger and better things, there's a certain amount of pride as well. And the fact that we've become a club that other teams come to and go, we'll have this player and that player. Some fans see that as a negative. I actually see it as a massive positive that we're doing something right. So I wish him all the best. And it will give me a little soft spot for Millwall in the Championship as well this season.
Oh, Gary, no, thanks, mate. And that's again a bold statement, and maybe we'll come back on in a year's time and we can talk about his progress and when he's pulling on the Danish shirt. But I think switching gears slightly, how actually no, before we switch gears, I think one point you touched on there, which I really liked, was selling players isn't always a bad thing. Number one, you're bringing money into the club. Number two, other players look at that and think, well, this if I join this club, they are a platform to bigger and greater things. And clubs like us, in the pyramid, we have to be okay with that, right? And I think I just wanted to touch on that because I think it was a great point that you made there. How do you go about replacing him at Sinsel Bank?
I would say that we already know who we want. I know I have a bit of insight in the club. I'm quite lucky. They're very open and very candid. It works on obviously a mutual respect and not kind of leaking any information. And I know, having spoken to guys in the recruitment team, that if they think somebody's going 6 months, 12 months beforehand, they will already have identified targets. So my gut feeling will be that they will have permanent targets and loan targets that they will be interested in. I would imagine that they'll want to move very quickly. They'll want to bring somebody in within a week or so. My gut feeling is probably a loan player, a high-profile loan, because as a League One club, you can loan an England under 21 goalkeeper, but as a League One club, you ain't going to loan an England under 21 outfield player. It'd be an 18 or a 19. So you always get that a little bit more bang for your buck. So I think that'll will be the case, and it'll be like for like. We'll loan a big keeper, 6'6". We've signed Jamie Pardington over the summer to be Lucas's number 2. We've signed Zach Geacock over the summer to be Lucas's number 3, and those two are going to fight over the course of next season, hopefully the number 1 spot. So it's a fluid process.
Yeah, no, and that's right. I think, you want to get someone in the building as soon as possible, given, we are in now, sort of, what is it, the 10th of July at the time of recording. So I think that's important. I think one other thing as well, I believe that you guys are out in Spain right at the moment, and I actually think that it's a very similar location to where we'll be going in just over a week's time. I think we're actually at similar training grounds. So Lukas might as well have just stayed there. So we'll have to see how that one goes.
It's also to be believed, he's on his way back today. I think one of the Red Tops published it. I don't read them, but I've seen it on some forums. So yeah, he might get an extra long stay now. We might go back out again.
Yeah, no, exactly, mate. And then I guess sort of bringing to the end of conversations on Lukas and also bringing in Alex Mitchell, who is a former Millwall lad. I can see your face there when we bring his name. You're almost sadder about him than you are Lukas. But I guess 2 questions in one. So, how much of Lucas's success last season was down to the defence in front of him? Because that's a question that will always be asked. A defence that included Alex Mitchell. And then the second part of that question is just any thoughts on Alex Mitchell, because I think we're both of our clubs are almost questioning the decision for him going to Charlton.
Yeah. So first of all, I think any goalkeeper that keeps 19 clean sheets, as I said, I think earlier, has got to thank his back 3. Alex came in and was a key part of that. He really won fans over, because I think when he first came in, we saw him as a kind of kick it away, head it away defender, rather than. And I see there's 2 types of defenders. There's that, and then there's the calmer play out from the back, kind of slow build up, which is what we've been going for. So we play 3 at the back. The ones on the right and the left are the ball players, and the one in the centre is the kind of warrior kind of thing, like the Tony Adams or whatever. Showing my age now, unfortunately. But over time, Alex actually matured, I think, as a player. He really grew into the right-sided centre-back role. He was battling with Adam Jackson, who's been with us for many years, Paddy O'Connor, the captain, and Sean Rowan, a natural left-footed centre-back. And as a four, as they rotated a mix, they were superb. And again, I think the amount of XG that we faced in the second half of the season was less than we faced in the first half of the season. So once Michael Skubala came in, things certainly changed again. And that was once Alex established himself at centre-back. Moving on to Alex, I am heartbroken about Alex because he is to us what Lukas was to us last summer. He was the player that I wanted us to sign, the player that I thought if we could bring him in at a decent fee with a sell-on clause, in a year's time, there's a player that could be worth £600,000, £700,000, £800,000. If he's not now, if I'm honest. He's a great guy. I was lucky enough to spend a bit of time with him and his family at Christmas on a Christmas night out. And then last game of the season, he's in the local pub, the Shakespeare on the High Street. He's got the flair going. He's singing Lincoln songs, off the record, chatting to him at the presentation evening. And it was, oh, I want to come back. I want to go wherever somebody plays me. And you think, yes, we're going to get him. And then those, I'm not going to swear, but that lot come in with their checkbook going, ooh, we can outspend anybody, as they do every single season, and never, ever actually manage to get any success from it. And it winds me up. And I think as a career move for Alex, I don't think Charlton is the best move for him, because I think with Charlton, they've either got to be first or second, or it's a failure. And if they're not first or second, their fans will turn, and you see really good players go through Charlton. Conor McGrandle's left us, went to Charlton. We've just signed him back because he couldn't get games. Scotty Fraser, one of the best central midfielders at this level for several seasons, not done it. You go to Charlton, I think it's a big risk. But for a lad of 21 years old, I mean, the wages were 80% more than we were offering. They're offering him silly wages. If we went to Millwall and bid 100,000, they were just going to go on 50. If we matched it, they were going to go 200. So for a young lad, what's he going to do? He's London based. He's quite a family lad as well. So I don't begrudge him it, but I was gutted. I really wanted him to be a Lincoln player.
I think it was interesting because he signed a new deal for Millwall at the end of last season, and then he obviously went on loan to yourselves, and you had a fantastic sort of second half of the season. You were awesome, weren't you? And Alex was, well, from what we could see, doing fantastically. We were having a natural change of the guard at centre back, and we just thought he would come back to Millwall, and all right, he might not start, but certainly be in the 18. So for him to be sold so early, and I've heard rumours of what the fee is, and it's not that much in context of a championship centre half. I know he didn't play much. We didn't play at all in the championship, but yeah, it does feel like an odd one, even from our perspective, because he never really got the chance to show what he could do. Every single season he went out on loan and seemed to do a good job. But I'm wondering how much of it was on the player side, on Alex's side. He was saying, look, I'm used to playing every week. If you can't guarantee you're going to play me every week, which I don't think Neil Harris could have done, because ultimately he's untested at that level. He was like, okay, well, I want to go. And then to your point, Charlton get the checkbook out, and that's how it ends up. So I think we're both disappointed for different reasons. And we'll have to see how his career goes, I suppose.
Yeah, I would say, having spoken to Alex, it's all about playing games. I wouldn't think he'd be a demand. I wouldn't think he'll go in and go, play games or I go. But I would think he knows very much what he needs at this stage of his career. He's played 100 games, one of them for Millwall, I think, in the Cup once. So, he don't want to go back and play 10 games again. He's on the right trajectory. So, best of luck to him. Nice lad. Really nice lad.
Yeah, no, best of luck to him. Okay, well, I think that draws us to the conclusion. I think the only thing left to do, Gary, is to explain to the listeners and the viewers how they can find you.
Yep. So if any Millwall fans are interested in regular Lincoln City content, you never know. StaceyWest.net is the website, and there's links on there to the podcast and to what else do we do? YouTube. And then I also have a championship website called The Real EFL, which also covers League One and League Two, covering transfer news and that sort of stuff. So that's might be worth checking out. That's I think it's at The Real EFL Social or something like that on Twitter. You'll find it typing in The Real EFL.
Great. No, and listeners, please do have a look at that, and also just as we're starting to build this channel as well, please do like, comment, share, subscribe. You've got no idea how much those little things can help a channel, especially when we're starting out. So, thank you to the listeners. Thank you to you, Gary, for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation, and we will see where this unfolds.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks. Bye for now.
Sports Social Podcast Network.